In every financial system, there's a hidden mechanism that quietly transfers money from ordinary savers to global banks. It's called the carry trade, and it's one of the most profitable yet least understood financial tricks ever invented. Imagine borrowing money in one country where interest rates are near zero, then lending it out somewhere else where rates are high. The difference? Pure profit. And the risks? Pushed onto you, the saver and the taxpayer. This is how modern finance creates money from thin air, not by producing value, but by exploiting global imbalances in currencies and credit. Before we unpack this, let's make it interactive. If you're watching right now, tell me where you're from and what time is it in your country. I want to see how global this audience really is. And while you're at it, drop a quick like if you enjoy uncovering how the financial system actually works. It helps a ton and lets us keep exposing these hidden games. Now, let's begin. The carry trade at first looks like a simple idea. A bank borrows cheap, lends expensive, and pockets the spread. But the scale is what makes it staggering. We're talking trillions of dollars moving across borders every day. Trades so vast they shape exchange rates, stock prices, and even national economies. It's not just banks. Hedge funds, corporations, and even pension funds take part. The idea became especially powerful in the 1990s, when financial deregulation allowed money to flow freely between countries. Central banks cut rates in the US, Japan, and Europe, and global investors saw a golden opportunity. Japan, with its near-zero interest rates for over a decade, became the world's piggy bank. Investors would borrow billions of yen for almost nothing, then convert it into dollars or Australian dollars to buy higher-yielding bonds. This was the infamous yen carry trade, a money machine that seemed unstoppable. For a time, it worked beautifully. The borrowed yen was cheap, the foreign assets were profitable, and the exchange rates remained stable, or even moved in their favor. It felt like a guaranteed win, a financial alchemy turning cheap debt into mountains of gold. But what happened next revealed the dark side of this global game. The carry trade isn't a risk-free lunch. It's a bet, a massive wager on stability. The entire strategy depends on two things: the interest rate difference remaining wide, and the exchange rate not moving against you. If the currency you borrowed in, like the yen, suddenly strengthens, the cost of paying back your loan skyrockets. Your profits can vanish in an instant, turning into catastrophic losses. This is precisely what happened during the 2008 financial crisis. As global markets panicked, investors fled from risky assets and rushed back to the safety of the Japanese yen. The yen surged, and the carry trade unwound with terrifying speed. Hedge funds that had leveraged themselves to the hilt went bankrupt overnight. The shockwaves didn't stop there. This massive deleveraging caused a global credit crunch, freezing financial markets and amplifying the crisis far beyond the U.S. subprime mortgage market. In essence, a trade that looked like a private bet between sophisticated investors had systemic consequences. Holding the entire global economy hostage? Sound familiar? This mechanism of borrowing cheap to speculate on higher returns is not a modern invention. 4 centuries ago, in the Dutch Republic, a similar psychological fever gripped the nation. During the height of tulip mania, people were not just buying tulips with their savings. They were borrowing money to do it. Merchants would take out loans, convinced that the price of a single bulb would continue its astronomical climb. They were, in effect, running a primitive carry trade, borrowing at the prevailing interest rate to invest in an asset they believed would offer an infinitely higher return. The perceived risk was zero, fueled by a collective delusion that the boom would never end. Just as modern traders believed in the perpetual weakness of the yen, Dutch speculators believed in the endless rise of the tulip. The psychology is identical, a disconnect from fundamental value, driven by the seductive logic of easy credit and the fear of missing out. The crash, when it came, was just as brutal. As a few savvy investors began to sell, panic set in. The credit-fueled bubble burst, leaving a trail of bankruptcies and ruined fortunes. A flower had brought an economic superpower to its knees. The lesson from tulip mania and from the 2008 crisis is that the carry trade is more than just an arbitrage strategy. It's a vehicle for transmitting financial instability across the globe. When central banks, like the U.S. Federal Reserve, slash interest rates to near zero, they aren't just trying to stimulate their own economy. They are unintentionally opening the floodgates for a global carry trade. This flood of cheap dollars doesn't always go into productive investments at home. Instead, It pours into emerging markets like Brazil, Turkey, or Indonesia, searching for higher yields. This is the modern carry trade. Trillions of hot money dollars flow into these countries, inflating their stock markets, creating real estate bubbles, and making their currencies artificially strong. For a while, it feels like an economic miracle. These nations experience rapid growth, and it seems like they've finally made it. But it's a phantom prosperity, built on a foundation of borrowed money and speculative fever. The local economies become addicted to this inflow of foreign capital, and their own central banks are often forced to keep interest rates high to attract it, further fueling the cycle. But this dependency creates a deadly vulnerability. The moment the Federal Reserve signals that it might raise interest rates, the entire machine goes into reverse. This was the taper tantrum of 2013. When the Fed merely hinted at slowing down its money printing, panic erupted. Global investors yanked their money out of emerging markets as quickly as it had flowed in. Currencies plummeted, stock markets crashed, and these miracle economies were suddenly facing deep recessions. The wealth that had been created was revealed to be an illusion, and the ordinary citizens of these countries paid the price through inflation, unemployment, and austerity. The global banks and hedge funds that had fueled the boom were the first to get out, often taking their profits with them. The savers and taxpayers in the emerging markets were left to clean up the mess. The carry trade, once a source of prosperity, became a weapon of mass economic destruction. It transferred risk from the core of the financial system to its periphery, and wealth from the periphery back to the core. So, where does this leave the ordinary saver? In a world of near-zero interest rates, the money in your savings account is actively losing value to inflation. This isn't an accident. It's a core feature of the system. Central banks keep rates low to encourage borrowing and spending, but this also creates the perfect environment for the carry trade. Your low-yield savings are, in a way, the raw material. Banks take these deposits, which cost them virtually nothing, and use them as the foundation for their global carry trade operations, lending them out at much higher rates in a different currency or asset class. They capture the spread while your purchasing power erodes. You, the saver, are bearing the initial cost of this cheap money, but you see none of the upside. Instead, you are exposed to the downside. When these carry trades unwind and cause a financial crisis, it is your government, funded by your taxes, that is forced to bail out the too-big-to-fail institutions that made the risky bets. It is a privatized gains, socialized losses system on a global scale. In the end, the global carry trade is a story of hidden connections and unintended consequences. It links a saver's bank account in Ohio to a currency crisis in Turkey, a central bank's decision in Tokyo to a property bubble in Australia. It is a complex web of incentives that funnels wealth from the risk-averse to the risk-takers, from the patient saver to the high-speed speculator. It turns the global financial system into a casino, where the house always has an edge, and the house is a small club of global financial institutions. The history of tulip mania and the crisis of 2008 are not relics of the past. They are a mirror. They show us that human psychology, amplified by the power of credit, remains the most volatile force in finance. And as long as this hidden mechanism exists, the quiet transfer of wealth will continue, a silent, invisible tax on savers everywhere, funding a game that they are never invited to play.